All right, welcome to book 2. So we just talked about book 1. We talked about the basics of wisdom and knowing. We decided that sight is the most useful sense for knowing. We decided, we figured out that you need experience and logic and knowledge. Okay, so theory plus experience equals, okay, the wisest person. And finally, we talked about a life of leisure is going to be, in other words, something that's not involved with the basics, the necessities of life, is what allows societies to develop things like the mathematical arts, rocket science, whatever you're talking about. All right, so going into 2. Since we are seeking this knowledge, we must inquire of what kind are the causes and the principles, the knowledge of which is wisdom. He's kind of talking about theory here, right? If one were to take the notions we have about a wise man, this might perhaps make the answer more evident. We suppose first that the wise man knows all things. Whew, that's a lot. Does anybody know all things? Okay, good. He clarifies, as far as is possible, although he has not the knowledge of each of them in detail. Secondly, that he who can learn things that are difficult and not easy for man to know is wise, since perception is common to all, and therefore easy and no mark of wisdom. In other words, just because you can see something, that doesn't make you wise. Again, he who is more exact. So here we go. Here's 1, he knows all things. He can learn things. That's 2, okay? And again, he who is more exact and more capable of teaching the causes is wiser. So he's a teacher, okay? That's 3. In every branch of knowledge, and in that of the sciences also, that which is desirable on of its own account, and for the sake of knowing, it is more the nature of wisdom than that which is desirable as the account for the results. So 4, you could say, kind of what we said in book 1, is he studies, I can spell right, studies for the sake of knowing. He is that college professor that just likes to study. And the superior science is more of the nature of wisdom than the ancillary, the practical. And for the wise man must not be ordered, but was order, and he must not obey another, and the less wise must obey him. So what he's saying here is he is respected and obeyed. Okay? He's at the top of his field. Okay? So this is a wise man. And there's 5 things that you can see in there that a wise man has. All right? Such and so many are the notions that we have about wisdom and the wise. Now, of these characteristics, that of knowing all things must belong to him who has in the highest degree of universal knowledge. For he knows, in a sense, all the instances that fall underneath the universal. And these things, the most universal, are on the whole the hardest for men to know, for they are furthest from the senses. So a truly wise man knows things that are far from the senses, right? So, and you do this by making connections. And the most exact of the sciences are those which deal most with the first principle, for those which involve fewer principles are more exact than those which involve additional principles, like arithmetic, than geometry. So the arithmetic is simple, but geometry, okay, is wiser because it has additional principles to it. What, baby? You can ask your mom. Okay. And close the door for me, please. Thanks. Did I skip one? But the science which investigates causes is also instructive in a high degree, for the people who instruct us are those who tell the causes of each thing. The causes is another way to put the causes here is the why, okay, or maybe a how, okay, though the why is the biggest one according to Aristotle. And understanding and knowledge pursued for their own sake are found most in the knowledge of that which is the most noble. For he who chooses to know this for the sake of knowing will choose most readily that which is most truly knowledge. And such is the knowledge that which is the most knowable. Okay, he's talking. I'm going to go push through this and we'll explain at the end of the paragraph. Just stick with me. And the first principles and the causes are the most knowable. By reason of these and from these, all other things come to be known, and not by these means, and not by these means of the things subordinate to them. And the scientist knows to the end each thing that must be done is the most authoritative of sciences, the most authoritative than the ancillary, the secondary science. And this end is the good of that thing, and in general the supreme good in the whole of nature. Judged by all the tests we have mentioned, then, the name in question falls to the same science. This must be a science that investigates the first principles and causes for the good. The end is one of the causes. Okay, so he just did a bunch of stuff here. Basically, what Aristotle is saying here is, without naming what it is exactly, he's saying that the most beneficial cause is trying to understand the good. Okay, the good being kind of like Plato's nature begetter, the why behind things. So yeah, it's good to understand some math. It's good to understand how to build. But the why, the reason for all this, the reason why this is all here, according to Aristotle at least, this is the sorry, my voice. This is the okay. This is the most noble cause. That it is not the science of production is clear even from the history of the earliest philosophers, for it is owing to their wonder that both men now begin to philosophize. They wondered originally at the obvious difficulties, then advanced little by little and stated difficulties about the greater matters, about the moon and the sun and the stars, about the genesis, the beginnings of the universe. And a man who is puzzled and wonders thinks himself ignorant, whence even the lover of the myth, in a sense, is lover of wisdom, for the myth is composed of wonders. This is why we study stories, because stories, in a sense, recreate that same sense of wonder that we get from studying the universe. Therefore, since they philosophized in order to escape from ignorance, evidently they were pursuing science in order to know, and not for any utilitarian, any basic practical end. And this is confirmed by the facts. For it was when almost all the necessities of life and all the things that make for comfort and recreation have been secured. This goes back to chapter 1, right? Leisure. Okay. That such knowledge began to sought. Evidently, when we do not seek it for the sake of any other advantage, but as man is free, we say, who exists for his own sake and not another's, so we pursue them as a free science, for it alone exists for its own sake. So what he's saying is you need leisure and freedom. To pursue the most noble. I'm going to put knowledge. No, I should use Aristotle's word causes. You need these two things. You need leisure and freedom to do it. Hence the possession of it, okay, free science, might be justly regarded as beyond human power. For in many ways, human nature is in bondage, right? So he's saying none of us are truly free in many ways. So that according to Simonides, God alone can have this privilege. And it is unfitting that man should not be content to seek the knowledge that is suited to him. If, then, there's something in what the poets say, and jealousy is natural to divine power, it would probably occur in this case above all. For all who excelled in this knowledge would be unfortunate. But the divine power cannot be jealous. God cannot be jealous. According to Aristotle, nay, according to the Proverbs, the barbs tell a lie, nor should any other science be more honorable than the one of this sort. For the most divine science is also the most honorable, and this science alone must be in two ways most divine. For the science which it would most would be most meet for God to have a divine science, and so is a science that deals with divine objects. And this science alone has both these qualities. For one, God is thought to be among the causes of all things and be a first principle. And two, such a science either God alone can have or God above all others. All sciences and deeds are more necessary than this, but none is better. This last sentence is interesting. There's all these other sciences are more necessary, perhaps for basic living, but none is better. My dad, who's a theologian, would say this: theology is the study of God. Theology is the most beneficial thing to study. All right. Yet the acquisition of it must in a sense end in something which is opposite of our original inquiries. For all men begin, as we said, by wondering that things are as they are, as they do about self-moving marionettes, right? The wonders, right? And about the solstices, the moons and the stars, and the incommensurability of the diagonal square with the side, right? I'd have to look up incommensurability. I'm not going to look it up right now, but I'm pretty sure it has something to do with the measurements. So let me know. For it seems wonderful to all who have not yet seen the reason. But there is a thing which cannot be measured even by the smallest unit. We must end in the contrary, and according to the proverb, the better state, as is the case in these instances too, when men learn the cause. For there is nothing which would surprise a geometer so much as if the diagonal turned out to be commensurable. Once again, I'm pretty sure that has to do with measurement. We have stated then that what is the nature of science we are searching for, and what is the mark which our search, the whole investigation, must reach. You know what? I'm going to look up commensurable, because that would just be a good thing for us to look. So commensurable. Let's see here. You guys see this too? Is measurable by the same standard. Proportional. Okay? Right. So, in other words, the diagonal and the square. Guys, I asked you guys to get out of this room while I'm doing this.
I have to brush my teeth.
Okay, go. So, the commensurable means being able to be measured. In other words, if the basics of geometry change, that would surprise a person who's mathematical, because we just assume it's always going to be the same. So what Aristotle is saying here is that there is something kind of deeper and more precise that we need to study in order to study the divine things. As he says, there's something that's so small that it can't be measured, and so on and so forth. And so this is what we're going to study here moving forward. All right, that's the end of book chapter 2. We'll pick it up